Women often come back after rejecting you because your absence creates value. When you stop chasing, they feel the shift. Your detachment sparks curiosity, comparisons expose your worth, and regret settles in. Confidence, growth, and self-respect make you magnetic, pulling them back to what they once overlooked. When you understand the power of scarcity, everything about attraction begins to make sense. Human beings naturally value what is rare, what is not easily accessible, and what cannot be taken for granted. This is especially true in relationships. When a woman rejects you, it often stems from the belief that you are readily available, always present, and willing to invest regardless of how she treats you. But the moment you step back, the moment you stop showing up in the same predictable way, something inside her shifts. Scarcity awakens value, and suddenly what she thought was ordinary becomes extraordinary. Scarcity works because it triggers the fear of loss. When someone is always there, their presence is assumed. But the second that presence fades, the absence speaks louder than words. A woman who once thought you would always be waiting realizes that you might actually move on, and that thought can be unsettling. She begins to reflect on what she dismissed and re-examines her decision. In this moment, your absence becomes your greatest strength. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to prove yourself. Your silence does all the work. The psychology behind scarcity is rooted in the way the human mind assigns value. People chase what feels limited, rare, or slipping away. That is why luxury items are marketed as limited edition and why experiences feel more precious when they are fleeting. The same principle applies to relationships. A man who doesn't make himself endlessly available, who respects his time and energy, becomes rare. He becomes someone who is not easily replaced. And when a woman realizes she cannot take your attention for granted, her perception of you changes drastically. Scarcity also exposes what is genuine. When you are constantly available, she might have confused your efforts with neediness. But when you step back, she is forced to ask herself, do I miss him because of what he gave me or because of who he truly is? This internal questioning often leads to the realization that your value was never in your constant presence. It was in the unique energy you carried, the confidence you projected, and the security you offered. Scarcity shines a spotlight on qualities she overlooked when she thought you would never leave. What makes scarcity powerful is that it doesn't require manipulation. It simply requires you to respect yourself enough not to be everywhere all the time. You choose to prioritize your growth, your goals, and your peace over chasing someone who dismissed you. Ironically, that very decision is what draws them back. Because in that moment, you demonstrate strength, self-respect, and independence. You show that your life does not revolve around her approval, and that makes you more appealing than ever. Scarcity reminds her that opportunities can be lost, and once something feels like it might slip away forever, it suddenly becomes worth fighting for. When a woman rejects you, she expects your energy to stay the same, chasing, convincing, proving, and waiting. She assumes that her absence will not alter your behavior because she has already placed you in a position where you seem dependent on her approval. But when you truly shift your energy, everything changes. Instead of pouring all your focus into her, you redirect it back to yourself. You invest in your growth, your peace, and your ambitions. You stop reacting to her silence or her rejection, and instead you start radiating a new form of calm strength. This transformation doesn't require words. It is something she feels deeply. Energy is not about what you say. It's about what you project. A man who used to over-explain himself, who used to wait for her calls, who used to tolerate mixed signals suddenly becomes silent, composed, and occupied with his own life. That shift doesn't go unnoticed. People can sense when your attention moves away from them, and women are especially sensitive to this change. Suddenly, she realizes the energy that once revolved around her is no longer there, and that realization creates discomfort. What she once rejected now feels different because she is no longer in control of it. The shift in energy also creates curiosity. When you stop giving her what she expects, she begins to wonder what happened. She may ask herself, why isn't he chasing anymore? Has he moved on? Has he found someone else? Has he finally realized his worth? That uncertainty pulls her back into your orbit, not because you demanded her attention, but because your changed energy silently communicates that you're no longer available in the same way. Your detachment disrupts the pattern, and humans are always drawn to what breaks routine. What makes this shift so powerful is that it's not about pretending or playing games. It's not about acting like you don't care while secretly waiting for her return. True energy shift comes from genuinely accepting rejection and choosing to use it as fuel for your own growth. You stop living in her shadow and start walking in your own light. This inner transformation creates an external glow, confidence in your posture, calmness in your voice, clarity in your actions. You begin to embody someone who doesn't need validation, and that alone makes you magnetic. Women are naturally drawn to strength, stability, and self-assuredness. When you cling, you project weakness, but when you release and refocus, you project strength. That strength shifts the entire dynamic. She now sees you as someone different from the man she once dismissed. She senses the confidence in your silence and the power in your distance. The very energy that made her reject you no longer exists, and in its place is a new version of you, grounded, composed, and unattached. This shift makes her question her choice and often compels her to return, not because you chased, but because you became someone she no longer wants to lose. When a woman rejects you, many times it is not the end of the story. It's a test of your reaction, a play of ego, and an experiment to see how much control she really has over you. The ego factor is powerful because rejection is not always about dislike. Often it is about testing your resilience, your boundaries, and your independence. Some women reject with confidence that you will still remain in the background, waiting for another chance, proving yourself over and over again. In their mind, rejection doesn't close the door. It simply places them in a position of power. But when you don't respond in the way they expected, when you don't beg, chase, or collapse, it shakes the very foundation of that ego. The ego thrives on control. When someone feels they have the ability to dismiss you and still keep you emotionally invested, it feeds their sense of importance. It validates the idea that they are desired no matter how they treat you. But the moment you deny that power, the moment you take your dignity and walk away, the ego feels an unexpected emptiness. Suddenly, the game they thought they controlled no longer exists. Your refusal to submit to their script becomes the one thing they did not anticipate. And when the ego is challenged, curiosity and even regret often follow. This is why many women come back after rejection. It is not always because they have discovered love that wasn't there before, but because their ego was disrupted. They expected one version of you, the one who would remain attached despite rejection. But instead, they find a version who refuses to be reduced to an option. That contrast forces them to reevaluate not just you, but themselves. They begin to wonder, why didn't he react? Why isn't he still pursuing me? Was I wrong about him? These questions grow louder with time, and the ego begins to demand answers. The ego factor also explains why rejection is rarely final when you stand firm in self-respect. A man who doesn't bend under rejection signals strength, and strength is deeply attractive, not because of the words you say, but because of the energy you project. When your actions communicate that you are complete with or without her, it diminishes her sense of dominance. And in that space, she starts to feel a pull toward you, not out of pity, but out of respect and intrigue. Rejection in many cases is not about you at all. It is about her ego needing reassurance. But when you refuse to feed that ego, you turn the tables. The very rejection that was meant to place you beneath her now becomes the reason she circles back. Because once the ego realizes it no longer has control, it seeks to restore that control by returning to the very person it tried to dismiss. And in that return, the balance shifts completely in your favor. After rejecting you, a woman often steps into a world where she assumes better options are waiting. In that moment, she may believe that you were replaceable, that someone else could offer more excitement, attention, or validation. But as time passes, reality rarely matches that fantasy. She begins comparing what she once had with what she encounters afterward, and the truth of those comparisons often pulls her back. This is the trap of comparison. What she thought was abundant suddenly feels scarce when she realizes that the unique energy, presence, and stability you brought into her life cannot easily be found in others. When someone rejects you, it's usually because they are under the illusion that something better exists outside the relationship or connection. They think they will find a man with more charm, more money, more attention, or more excitement. But often, what they actually find are people who can't offer the same balance you did. They might encounter men who are attractive but lack emotional depth, men who provide attention but not consistency, or men who bring charm without substance. And in the quiet moments, they begin to notice the difference. Every conversation, every interaction, every disappointment becomes a silent reminder of what they let go. Comparison works like a mirror. Each time she looks at the new faces in her life, she unintentionally reflects back on how you treated her, how you carried yourself, and how you made her feel. The small things, a text that came on time, the way you listened, the way you remained composed, become larger in hindsight when measured against others who don't measure up. She starts to realize that what she dismissed wasn't ordinary. It was valuable, but she only saw it clearly when placed beside something lesser. This is why rejection often turns into regret. The comparison trap exposes what was once taken for granted. When she rejected you, she likely thought you were one of many. But when she experiences others, she realizes that you are not easy to replace. Scarcity takes root in her mind, and the memory of you becomes more appealing because everything else falls short. The same qualities she overlooked before now become the very qualities she seeks, and the gap between expectation and reality forces her to reconsider her choice. The comparison trap is also intensified when she sees you thriving after rejection. If she compares her new experiences with your growth, success, and confidence, the difference becomes even sharper. She notices that while others may stumble, you continue to elevate. That contrast magnifies her regret because she rejected someone who not only had value, but is now becoming even more rare. The trap closes in when she realizes that by rejecting you, she didn't upgrade, she downgraded. And so, many women return, not because they didn't mean the rejection, but because the comparison made them see you differently. They thought you were replaceable until reality proved otherwise. That realization is powerful enough to pull them back toward what they once dismissed, because the human heart always longs for what it cannot easily find again. Detachment carries a mystery that words alone cannot explain. When a woman rejects you, she expects you to fight harder for her attention, to prove your worth, or to show her that you won't let go. But when instead you respond with calm acceptance and genuine detachment, it unsettles her. Suddenly, the dynamic she anticipated no longer exists. She thought she knew how you would react, yet your silence and composure send a completely different message. This mystery becomes powerful because it creates uncertainty in her mind. She begins to wonder what you are thinking, what you are doing, and most importantly, why you are no longer seeking her validation. True detachment is not about pretending to move on. It's about shifting your focus back to yourself in such a way that your energy no longer revolves around her. You don't have to announce it, you don't have to prove it, and you don't even have to make her see it. Detachment is felt. When you stop needing her approval, when you stop reacting to her silence, and when you stop showing up in the same predictable ways, the absence of that attention creates a vacuum. And in that vacuum, curiosity grows. She begins to miss the very energy she once dismissed. The mystery of detachment lies in the unknown. When you are constantly available, she knows where you stand. When you detach, she no longer has that certainty. Did you move on? Have you lost interest? Are you happier without her? These questions circle her mind because your detachment removes her control over the situation. People are drawn to what they cannot fully grasp, and by stepping away, you become less predictable and more intriguing. What was once ordinary becomes rare, and what was once taken for granted suddenly feels like a loss. Another powerful aspect of detachment is the confidence it communicates without words. When you no longer chase after rejection, you silently declare that your value doesn't diminish just because someone failed to see it. That quiet confidence is far more attractive than any speech or explanation. She sees a man who is not desperate, who respects himself enough to walk away, and who chooses peace over chaos. That image lingers in her mind and challenges her assumptions about you. The same rejection that was meant to weaken you ends up highlighting your strength. Detachment also allows you to grow. While she is caught up wondering why you pulled away, you are busy building yourself, focusing on your goals, and elevating your life. This progress adds to the mystery because the next time she notices you, she doesn't see the man she rejected. She sees a transformed version of him. That transformation is magnetic because it shows you never needed her to complete you. You became whole on your own, and that wholeness makes her question her decision. In the end, detachment becomes the force that draws her back, not because you pushed, but because you pulled away. The very mystery of your silence, your composure, and your independence becomes the attraction she cannot ignore. Validation is one of the deepest forces in human relationships. People crave it, seek it, and even shape their behavior to receive it. In the beginning, you might have been the one constantly giving validation, praising her beauty, chasing her attention, showing her she was the center of your world. That flood of affirmation can feel flattering at first, but for many women, too much of it too soon becomes predictable. She begins to feel that she has already won, that your affection is guaranteed no matter how she responds. This is often the silent stage that leads to rejection because validation without balance can make you seem too available. But the story doesn't end there. Once you stop giving that validation, the entire dynamic shifts. Suddenly, she is no longer the one receiving constant reassurance. Your silence becomes louder than your words. Instead of you proving your interest daily, she begins to feel the absence of what once fueled her sense of importance. This is the moment where validation reverses, when the one who once rejected you now starts seeking the very attention she once took for granted. The reversal happens because human beings don't just want validation, they want to earn it. What is freely given without pause eventually loses its meaning. When you detach and stop handing out approval, your validation regains value. She realizes that your attention isn't endless and that she must now qualify for it. The same compliments and energy that once seemed ordinary now feel rare and therefore precious. She begins to wonder, what changed? Why doesn't he see me the same way? Does he no longer find me worthy? These questions fuel a deep desire to win back what was lost. Validation reversal also works on a psychological level. People tend to chase what they feel slipping away. When your attention was abundant, she felt secure enough to dismiss it. But when you redirect that attention inward, when you stop needing her acknowledgement, the security she felt dissolves. This creates tension inside her, a pull to seek out the comfort of your approval again. Without you saying a word, she feels compelled to test whether she still has an effect on you, whether she still holds a place in your mind. That test often leads her back into your orbit. Another key factor is that your validation, once withdrawn, becomes associated with growth. As you invest more in yourself, you elevate in confidence, presence, and strength. Now, if she wants validation from you, she must face the reality that she's not just earning the attention of the man she once rejected, she's chasing the interest of someone who has grown beyond who he was. This makes your approval even more powerful because it is no longer automatic. It becomes a reflection of your standards and your self-respect. Validation reversal teaches her that attention is not her right to demand, but a privilege to be earned. And when that realization strikes, the very woman who once dismissed your value often returns, drawn not by your pursuit, but by the quiet challenge of winning back what she once lost. Timing has an undeniable influence on human decisions. Often when a woman rejects you, it is less about you and more about where she is in her life at that moment. She might feel distracted by other priorities, influenced by external opinions, or blinded by the illusion that better opportunities are waiting. In those moments, she convinces herself that letting go is the right choice, but time has a way of revealing truths that aren't clear in the heat of decision-making. What feels certain in one season can look like a mistake in another. And when the dust settles, regret often follows. Regret surfaces when reality doesn't align with expectation. A woman who once believed she could easily replace your presence may later find that others don't match your qualities. She expected something greater, but instead encounters disappointment. Over time, she begins to remember the way you made her feel, the consistency you provided, the calmness you carried. These reflections grow stronger when contrasted against new experiences that lack depth or stability. Slowly, what she dismissed begins to look like something she should have cherished. That realization doesn't happen overnight. It happens gradually as time forces her to see what she lost. Timing also plays a role in how people perceive value. When you were fully present, she may have overlooked you because she assumed your presence would last forever. But once you step away, once she sees you moving forward without hesitation, the value of your absence magnifies. Time apart becomes the lens through which she views her choice. And with every passing day, the weight of regret grows heavier. She may not admit it openly, but deep down she begins to question whether her rejection was truly the right decision. Another layer of regret emerges when she notices your transformation. Rejection often serves as fuel for personal growth. You redirect your energy into becoming stronger, wiser, and more successful. And as she observes from a distance, regret intensifies, not only for losing you, but for losing the evolved version of you she could have been part of. Timing has shifted in your favor because the man she rejected is no longer the man she now sees. He is better, sharper, and more confident. That contrast highlights the cost of her choice. Regret also deepens with loneliness. When the excitement of other distractions fades, she remembers the stability and presence you once offered. What seemed like freedom at the time of rejection can eventually feel like emptiness. And in that silence, the mind replays what was lost. She might recall moments where you showed patience, where you listened, where you gave without asking. Those memories resurface with more clarity because, in hindsight, they stand out as rare qualities. Timing and regret go hand in hand. What she thought was a final decision was simply a momentary judgment clouded by circumstance. But time does not erase your value. It amplifies it. And regret is the natural outcome when she realizes that what she rejected may not return again. That awareness is what often pulls her back, seeking another chance at what she once dismissed. Confidence is one of the most magnetic qualities a man can carry, and it becomes even more powerful when it emerges after rejection. When a woman turns you down, she unconsciously watches how you handle it. Do you collapse, beg, and chase, or do you rise, maintain composure, and continue living with strength? The answer makes all the difference. A man who clings communicates neediness, but a man who embraces rejection with self-respect radiates confidence that is impossible to ignore. That confidence has a pull of its own. It doesn't shout, it doesn't chase, it doesn't demand. It simply exists, and others are drawn to it naturally. Magnetic confidence is built on self-belief, not external validation. When you stop needing someone to approve of you in order to feel worthy, you free yourself from dependence. You stand tall because you know your value is not diminished by one person's decision. That quiet assurance speaks louder than words. A woman who once rejected you begins to sense that you are not affected by her choice in the way she expected. She may have thought rejection would weaken you, but instead it sharpened you. That shift in perception is powerful because it forces her to see you through a new lens. Confidence also becomes magnetic because it signals abundance. When you carry yourself with certainty, you communicate that your world is not limited to one person's opinion of you. You project the energy of someone who has options, who is focused on his mission, and who refuses to be defined by rejection. This is deeply attractive because people are drawn to those who lead their own lives with purpose. Your confidence tells her and everyone around you that you are not waiting to be chosen, you are already choosing yourself. Another reason confidence pulls people back is because it creates contrast. Before, she may have seen you as predictable, someone who would always be there no matter what. But when rejection doesn't break you and instead you elevate, the difference becomes undeniable. She now sees a man who is stronger, calmer, and more self-assured than the one she dismissed. That contrast creates intrigue, and intrigue leads to attraction. What she thought she understood about you no longer applies, and the mystery of who you've become draws her closer. Magnetic confidence is not arrogance. It is grounded strength. It doesn't seek attention, yet it commands it. It doesn't beg for love, yet it attracts it. When you build yourself, pursue your goals, and walk with certainty, you naturally shift the balance of power. Women are instinctively drawn to men who know who they are and where they're going. And when she compares the man you've become to the one she rejected, regret blends with admiration. That pull is hard to resist because true confidence cannot be faked. It is felt. This is why many women return after rejection, not because you begged for another chance, but because your confidence grew so magnetic that ignoring it became impossible. In the end, women often come back after rejecting you not because you begged for their attention, but because you transformed in ways they didn't expect. scarcity showed your value, your shift in energy unsettled her certainty, and her ego lost control when you refused to chase. Comparisons highlighted your uniqueness, detachment made you mysterious, and the reversal of validation forced her to seek what she once dismissed. Time revealed her regret, and your magnetic confidence turned rejection into attraction. The lesson is simple. You never lose by respecting yourself. When you choose growth, self-worth, and inner strength, life, and even those who once walked away, find their way back to you.